Hello, everyone. Today we're going to read the second part of Sweat. Just a quick recap. The characters in this story are Delia and Sykes as her husband. Delia is a washerwoman who has lived with Sykes, who we learn has not only been cheating on her, but has abused her in the past. Delia's work as a washwoman has paid for the house that she lives in. And right now they are fighting. Sykes wants to get her out so he can move his girlfriend Bertha in. And Delia's like, nope, not going to happen. So we begin to see that from the porch talkers before that Delia used to be very pretty and Sykes really had to work hard to get her, but now they're just fighting all the time. So when the story first opened, we saw that Sykes scared Delia with what he pretended to be a snake. It was the whip. So let's take a look at what happens now. When the story first opened, it was spring, and now we're going to find out that it is August in Florida, so it's very hot. The sun had burned July to August. The heat streamed down like a million hot arrows, smiting all things living upon the earth. Grass withered, leaves browned, snakes went blind and shedding, and men and dogs went mad. Dog days. So one of the things you want to see is snakes in this story are really important, so let's be on the lookout for more snakes in this story. Delia came home one day and found Sykes there before her. She wondered, but started to go into the house without speaking, even though he was standing in the kitchen door and she must either stoop under his arm or ask him to move. He made no room for her. She noticed a soapbox beside the steps, but paid no particular attention to it, knowing that he must have brought it there. As she was stooping to pass under his outstretched arm, he suddenly pushed her backward, laughingly. Look in the box there, Delia. I done brung you something. She nearly fell upon the box in her stumbling, and when she saw what it held, she all but fainted outright. Sykes, my God, you take that rattlesnakes away from here. You gotta. Oh, Jesus, have mercy. I ain't got to do nothing of the kind. Fact is, I ain't got to do nothing but die. 'Tain't no use of you putting on airs making out like you scared of that snake. He's going to stay right here till he die. He wouldn't bite me because I knows how to handle him. Know how he wouldn't risk breaking out his fangs again your skinny legs. No, Sykes, don't keep that thing around here to scare me to death. You knows I'm even feared of earthworms. That's the biggest snake I ever did see. Kill him, Sykes, please. Don't ask me to do nothing for you. Going around trying to be so damn astrosperious. Nah, I ain't gonna kill it. I think a damn sight more of him than you. That's a nice snake. Ain't nobody like him. And nobody likes him can just kiss the grits. So he basically gets the snake because he wants to scare her out of the house. He's like, basically, if you don't like it, you can leave. The village soon heard that Sykes had the snake and came to see and ask questions. How the henfire did you catch that 6-foot rattler? Sykes, Thomas asked. So now one of the things that we notice is that the snake here mirrors the opening of the story where Sykes tried to scare her this before with a fake snake, and now he's actually trying to scare her with a real snake. He's afraid and he just doesn't care about it. In fact, he's going to try to use that to get her out. One of the things I also wanted to point out before I continue reading is that in between when we have dialogue, because the dialogue is hard to understand, but in between sections of dialogue, Hurston has paragraphs of descriptions. And one of the things that it does is it provides a breath from the dialect so that we can interpret what's said. And it also serves as a transition between the scenes. So be on the lookout for that as well. So one of the things we also see is he likes to brag, just like the men talked about. He's full of frogs, so he can't hardly move. That's how I eased up on him. But I'm a snake charmer, and I knows how to handle him. Pardon me. Shucks, that ain't nothing. I could catch one every day if I so wanted to. What he needs is a heavy hickory club leaned real heavy on his head. That's the best way to charm a rattlesnake. Nah, well, y'all just don't understand these diamondbacks like I do, said Sykes in a superior tone of voice. So one thing to know about diamondback snakes is they are extremely venomous, extremely deadly. The village agreed with Walter, but the snake stayed on. His box remained by the kitchen door with its screen door covering. 2 or 3 days later, it had digested its meal of frogs and literally came to life. It rattled at every movement in the kitchen or the yard. One day, as Delia came down the kitchen steps, she saw his chalky white fangs curved like scimitars hung in the wire meshes. This time she did not run away with averted eyes as usual. She stood for a long time in the doorway in a red fury that grew bloodier for every second that she regarded the creature that was her torment. And so this idea of torment links the snake to Sikes. And in many ways, Sikes is kind of like the snake. That night, she broached the subject as soon as Sikes sat down to the table. So one of the things I want you to notice in this next exchange is how much they insult each other. Sikes, I want you to take that snake away from here. You done starved me and I put up with you. You done beat me and I took that. But you done killed all my insides bringing that bomb in here. Sikes poured out a saucerful of coffee and drank it deliberately before he answered her. A whole lot I cared about how you feel, inside or out. That snake ain't going no damn where until I gets ready for him to go. So far as a beating is concerned, you ain't took all that you're going to take if you'll stay around me. So again, he threatens her with more violence if he stays. Delia pushed back her plate and got up from the table. I hate you, Sikes, she said calmly. I hate you to the same degree I used to love you. I done took till my belly is full up to my neck. That's the reason I got my letter from the church and moved my membership to Woodbridge. So I don't have to take no sacrament with you. I don't want to see you around me at all. Lay around with that woman all you want to, but go away from me in my house. I hate you like a suck egg dog. So this is actually not description here. That's my mistake. Sorry about that. But this is. Sikes almost let the huge wad of cornbread and collard greens he was chewing fall out of his mouth in amazement. He had a hard time whipping himself up to the proper fury to try to answer Delia. Well, I'm glad you does hate me. I'm sure tired of you hanging on to me. I don't want you. Look at your stringy old neck. Your raw bony legs and arms is enough to cut a man to death. You looks just like the devil's doll, baby, to me. You can't hate me no worse than I hate you. I've been hating you for years. This is what she says back. Your black hide don't look like nothing to me but a pass of wrinkled up rubber with your big old ears flapping on each side of you like a pair of buzzard wings. Don't think I'm going to be run away from my house neither. I'm going to the white folks about you, my young man, the very next time you lay hands on me. My cup is done run over. Delia said this with no signs of fear, and Sikes departed from the house, threatening her, but made not the slightest move to carry out any of them. That night he did not return at all, and the next day being Sunday, Delia was glad she did not have to quarrel before she hitched up her pony and drove the 4 miles to Woodbridge. She stayed to the night service love feast, which was very warm and full of spirit. In the emotional winds, her domestic trials were borne far and wide, so that she sang as she drove homeward. Jordan water, black and cool, chilled the body, not the soul. And I want to cross Jordan in a time of calm. So this, singing about the River Jordan, it reminded me about the songs about the River Jordan that we saw when we were studying blues music, but also the painting from the very beginning of this unit. She came from the barn to the kitchen door and stopped. What's the matter, old Satan? You ain't kicking up your racket? She addressed the snake's box. Complete silence. She went on into the house with a new hope in its birth struggles. Perhaps her threat to go to the white folks had frightened Sikes. Perhaps he was sorry. 15 years of misery and suppression had brought Delia to the place where she would hope anything that looked towards a way over or through her wall of inhibitions. She felt in the match safe behind the stove at once for a match. There was only one there. That man wouldn't fetch nothing here to save his rotten neck, but he can run through with what I brings quick enough. Now he done toted off nigh high onto half a box of matches. He done had that woman here in my house too. So he used all but one of the matches. Now they don't have any indoor plumbing or any electricity. So this match is actually not having any more matches. She's going to use the last one. And that's going to be important to the story. Nobody but a woman could tell how she knew this even before she struck the match, but she did, and it put her into a new fury. So it's one thing to know that your husband's cheating on you. It's certainly another to bring his mistress into your house and possibly into your bed. Presently, she brought in the tubs to put the white things to soak. This time, she decided she need not bring the hamper out of the bedroom. She would go in there and do the sorting. She picked up the pot-bellied lamp and went in. The room was small, and the hamper stood hard by the foot of the white iron bed. She could sit and reach to the bedpost, resting as she worked. I want to cross Jordan in a calm time. She was singing again. Luckily for you, I will not sing.
The mood of the love feast had returned. She threw back the lid of the basket almost gaily. Then, moved by both horror and terror, she sprang back toward the door. There lay the snake in the basket. He moved sluggishly at first, but even as she turned round and round, jumped up and down in an insanity of fear, he began to stir vigorously. She saw him pouring his awful beauty from the basket upon the bed. Then she seized the lamp and ran as fast as she could to the kitchen. The wind from the open door blew out the light, and the darkness added to her terror. She sped to the darkness of the yard, slamming the door after her before she thought to set down the lamp. She did not feel safe, even on the ground, so she climbed up in the hay barn. So remember, there's no more matches, and it's the middle of the night. There for an hour or more, she lay sprawled upon the hay, a gibbering wreck. Finally, she grew quiet, and after that, coherent thought. With this stalked through her a cold, bloody rage. Hours of this, a period of introspection, a space of retrospection, then a mixture of both. Out of this, an awful calm. So she's ready for whatever happens. Well, I done the best I could. If things ain't right, God knows 'tain't my fault. So one of the things that she realizes that Sykes was the one who put the snake there. And so now she's kind of like come to terms with it. And it's been hours that she's had time to think about this. And so she's like, well, whatever happens, happens. She went to sleep, a twitchy sleep, and woke up to a faint gray sky. There was a loud, hollow sound below. She peered out. Sykes was at the woodpile demolishing a wire-covered box. He hurried to the kitchen door, but hung outside there some minutes before he entered, and stood some minutes more inside before he closed it after him. The gray in the sky was spreading. Delia descended without fear now and crouched beneath the low bedroom window. The drawn shade out of the dawn shut in the night, but the thin walls held back no sound. So it's dark inside the bedroom, but one of the things that I just realized, that he's demolishing the wire-covered box, and I've taught this for a while, I think he's trying to hide his evidence. Like he's trying to like say, hey, it got destroyed, something happened, that's how it got out, because he was trying to kill her. Okay, so now he's inside the house. It's really dark. Okay, so the shade shuts out any light, but she can hear everything, and this is her talking. That old Scratches woke up now, she mused at the tremendous whir inside, which every woodsman knows is one of the sound illusions. The rattler is a ventriloquist. His whir sounds to the right, to the left, straight ahead, behind, close underfoot, everywhere but where it is. Woe to him who guesses wrong unless he is prepared to hold up his end of the argument. Sometimes he strikes without rattling at all. And so what she's saying there is that when you hear the rattle, like at night, it might sound like it's over to the left and then to the right, and maybe it's behind you. You don't know where it is because it's like it plays tricks on you. And sometimes it bites without anything at all. So if you hear something, you're scared. If you don't hear something, you're scared. Inside, Sykes heard nothing until he knocked a pot lid off the stove while trying to reach the match, safe in the dark. He had emptied his pockets of Bertha's. The snake seemed to wake up under the stove, and Sykes made a quick leap into the bedroom. In spite of the gin he had had, his head was clearing now. My God, he chattered, if I could only strike a light. The rattling ceased for a moment as he stood paralyzed. He waited. It seemed like the snake waited also. Oh, for the light, I thought it'd be too sick. Sykes was muttering to himself when the whir began again, closer, right underfoot this time. Long before this, Sykes' ability to think had been flattened down to primitive instinct, and he leaped onto the bed. Outside, of course, that's where the snake is. Outside, Delia heard a cry that might have come from a maddened chimpanzee, a stricken gorilla. All the terror, all the horror, all the rage that man possibly could express without a recognizable human sound. A tremendous stir inside there, another series of animal screams, the intermittent whir of the reptile. The shade torn violently down from the window, letting in the red dawn. A huge brown hand seizing the window stick. Great dull blows upon the window floor, punctuating the gibberish of sound long after the rattle of the snake had abruptly subsided. All this Delia could see and hear from her place beneath the window, and it made her ill. She crept over to the floor clocks and stretched herself on the cool earth to recover. She lay there. Delia, Delia. She could hear Sykes calling in a most despairing tone as one who expected no answer. The sun crept on up and he called. Delia could not move. Her legs were gone flabby. She never moved. He called and the sun kept rising. My God, she heard him moan. My God from heaven. She heard him stumbling about and got up from her flower bed. The sun was growing warm. As she approached the door, she heard him call out hopefully,
Delia, is that you out here?
She saw him on his hands and knees as soon as she reached the door. He crept an inch or two toward her, all that he was able, and she saw his horribly swollen neck and his one open eye shining with hope. A surge of pity too strong to support bore her away from that eye that could not fail to see the tubs. He would see the lamp. Orlando with his doctors was too far. She could scarcely reach the chinaberry tree where she waited in the growing heat, while inside she knew the cold river was creeping up and up to extinguish that eye, which must by now know that she knew. So basically, she lets him die, and he knows it. And there's not a lot she can do. So something to ask yourself, is she right to just kind of let him lay there and die? Or should she have gone for help, even though that Orlando was too far away and there was nothing they could do? So something to think about, maybe something we'll talk about in our Zoom class. Okay, so that's our story. One of the things that we see is she is someone who is very strong. She is someone who, so the Harlem Renaissance was about everybody coming together and like, we're all gonna help each other out. But what's different about this story is she is a strong woman who saves herself. She is not someone who relies on or needs anybody else to help her out. Some of the other themes that are in this story, just double check my notes here, is this idea about self-determination and a desire to rise above circumstances. That is certainly in line with the Harlem Renaissance. Also, this idea about letting go of the past and moving forward, reaching towards the future, I think you could argue that's what she does. And that's certainly an idea that is part of the Harlem Renaissance. And this idea that she wants to have her voice heard, that she's like, hey, I'm someone worth saving. So in many ways, this is very much a part of the Harlem Renaissance, but in some ways it's also very separate from, because nobody comes to her rescue. She has to save herself. But the other thing that makes this unique is Zora Neale Hurston's use of dialect. And so that's the next thing I wanted to point out to you very quickly. Hold on a sec. So I wanted to take a look at this, because this is your assignment that one of your assignments that you're gonna be doing for me. So one of the things that we see with Zora Neale Hurston is she was both praised and criticized for her use of dialect. And it was called dialect in folk speech. Some people, like Alan Locke, who we studied, said that it was rare and it was considered, like, he's like, yeah, that's a good thing, because so much of what we have isn't realistic. And then she's like, yeah, this is realistic. But she also received a lot of criticism, most notably from writer and poet Richard Wright, who said that she kind of played into this idea of white ideas of what being Black meant, and this idea about, being simple, and that she was doing it to appease a white audience, that she was basically playing into stereotypes. And the New Yorker magazine wrote that basically Black dialect was at the heart of her work, but it was dangerous business. She was disowned by a lot of the founders of the Harlem Renaissance because they felt that it was, again, played into stereotypes. But one of the things that was interesting about her is that so she grew up in Eatonville, Florida, and then moved to Jacksonville. But when she went to Barnard College, after she left to come back home, and she was talking to people in her own hometown, they couldn't understand her because her speech patterns had changed and had like more of a New England kind of style to it. And when she tried to go do research in Jamaica, people wouldn't talk to her because they didn't trust her. They didn't trust the way that she spoke. And so she was kind of in a way caught between two worlds. And so one of the things that she does with dialect is she wants to show what life was like for people in the South. And so her use of dialect was very much kind of her own thing. And it's kind of what caused her to go out of favor and to, in fact, she died penniless. And her most famous book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, had to be almost rediscovered by Alice Walker, who won a prize for her writing. She wrote The Color Purple, who also wrote in dialect, as well as Toni Morrison, who also wrote in dialect. But the first person to kind of really do it and own it was Zora Neale Hurston, and she paid a price for it. So what you're going to do is, the question that I ask you is, how she uses dialect, and is the criticism she receives, is it justified? Like, should she have used dialect? Is it, what they have to say justified or not? And why do you think she uses dialect like she does? Like, what message does she want to convey about how people of color spoke in the South, and what makes you think that? So you're just going to write a paragraph where you kind of answer those two questions. As an extension, I wanted you to think about, is her use of dialect part of the ideas of the Harlem Renaissance or departure from the beliefs and ideas of it? What makes you think this? Now, you can argue this either way, because certainly you could argue that if I'm trying to claim my heritage, if I'm part of the Harlem Renaissance and I want to claim my heritage, you could argue that. You could say, yeah. Or you could say no, because, she's not lifting up people. So it's up to you. Whatever you argue is fine as long as you support it. That's going to be just one paragraph. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to pick what you think is the most important sentence in this whole story, just one. And then you're going to write a short paragraph about why you think it's the most important. Some things that you might want to consider could be what your sentence adds to the story's plot, what your line tells us about a character or characters, maybe what your line, otherwise in a sentence, tells us about the relationship between characters, maybe what the deeper meaning of your sentence is besides what's on the surface. One of the things that I thought was so interesting is when people were talking about what the house meant to her, and also too what the title sweat meant. I thought that was interesting. Some of you guys, one person in particular said that sweat takes a long time to come out of your body, like it cleanses your body. And this person said that the title was like how it took Delia a long time and a lot of hardship and heartache to get to where she is. And that's why it's called Sweat. And I was like, what? That's crazy deep. So anyway, you could think about how would your story be different if your chosen sentence were changed or even removed. And you might talk about what kind of sentence it is. Is it dialogue? Is it background, foreshadowing? You don't need to write about all of those. You don't need to write about any of those. It's just going to be a short paragraph about what is your sentence. You want to write that down and why you chose it. Okay? And so that is your lesson for this week. I hope you guys all have a great day, and I look forward to seeing all of you very soon. All right, and I'm going to stop my recording.